Hey guys, and welcome to another edition of The Lion's Den. We're going to just give it a one more second or two, let the room fill up a bit. If you guys could just do me a favor and quickly retweet the room out, we'd greatly appreciate that. And we'll be right back with you in one quick minute. All right, all right, all right. So happy Friday, everybody, and welcome. Like I said, welcome back to the Lion's Den again. We've got Mitchell, who is the founder here of STEAD. We also have STEAD here, the actual X profile. So what you need to do, if you could please, just go ahead and give these guys a follow. We greatly appreciate that. And while the room's filling up here, Mitchell, how are you doing today, bud?
I'm doing pretty good. How's my audio?
You sound great, man. You sound great. Yeah. So is Jesse? Is that my guy Jesse? That's on the actual Steed profile as well.
Yeah, yeah, I'm here with
Yes,
Jesse.
yes,
Okay, great, great,
I
great,
am
great.
here.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure I didn't want to call somebody by the wrong name or something. So yeah, I know that we guys have been conversating back and forth and things like that. So let's see, Mitchell, if you want, would you like to just give us just maybe a little bit about yourself and your background and things like that?
Sure, yeah. I've got kind of a little bit of a different background than a lot of other people who are I guess in related industries. So I initially came to the Philippines. I grew up in Michigan. I went to university for a computer science degree, graduated, got my degree. Then I kind of pivoted to some degree. I've been involved, I worked at a few banks and helped manage their databases and things like that. And then I got involved in naval architecture and seasteading and this kind of industry to build floating houses or floating resorts, floating villages, a lot of floating infrastructure. So we ended up moving to the Philippines with our company, with our operations, and I've been based here for about 2 years. And so while I'm over here, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but STEAD is the cryptocurrency side of the equation, and there's kind of like another side of the equation, which is a company that's involved in naval architecture and is designing boats, catamarans, fish cages that can grow shrimp and lobster and seaweed and oysters all in the same cage with the fish, right? So they're really kind of interesting things. But it all kind of works together because the idea behind our project is that we're using liquidity on the blockchain to basically create a token which is collateralized by real world assets, which is what gives it its value.
That's amazing. Like I've always said, when we have these special guests like like yourselves here with Steed, it's always amazing to me that the technology and things. And just a little background story for everybody. Obviously, me and Scott had a little meeting with Mitchell and Jesse. And he was just, I mean, you could just tell that Mitchell is extremely passionate about what he's doing here with Steed, and I'm also floored by some of the things that he was just telling me. It was basically the equivalent of me watching like a documentary on some of these things that Mitchell was talking about. Truly mind blowing. And as well, I'd always like to add too. That I've said many a times before. When a project comes up, and they're doing something out of the norm, I guess you should say, right? It's not your everyday run of the mill project. And it's interesting, and I'm definitely glad that these guys are here today to share with the audience. Now, Mitchell, I did have a question for you here. And what actually is Steed setting out to do, and how does it work? Do you want to give us a little bit of information about that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So STEAD, what we're doing with STEAD is we in the Philippines and in a lot of other developing countries, there is a lack of liquidity. So there's actually, especially in the Philippines, I know there's very, very smart people, very hardworking people, and the technology that is employed, especially in the aquaculture industry, is actually oftentimes very high end. But because the banking sector in a lot of these underdeveloped countries, they don't have enough capital, they don't have enough liquidity, they don't have enough money to get small, profitable businesses to get them to grow fast enough to compete on the international market. So that's where blockchain technology can actually step in. So with the blockchain, what do you have? You have a lot of people that have a lot of liquidity. You have a lot of different kinds of cryptocurrencies that have a lot of different market caps and different functions and utility. And right now, you don't have one that focuses on bringing that needed liquidity into developing countries. More specifically, bringing that needed liquidity into the aquacultural sector. So I could give an example. Let's say that you've got someone here in the Philippines, they've got a tuna boat, a tuna fishing boat. So there are a lot of yellowfin tuna in the waters around the Philippines, which is where we're based out of right now, which is where we're opening up this project. And if I'm a fisherman and I've got a boat that's catching, bringing in enough tuna, yellowfin tuna every year that it could, um, let's say I've got 15 employees, that still doesn't necessarily mean that I can easily get a loan from the bank in order to get a second boat. Because again, with this crunch in liquidity, with this lack of liquidity in these poorer developing countries, they need that boost. And yet they can give good enough profits, actually great profits on the capital goods, the equipment and fishing vessels and things like that. They can give great returns, but they don't have the opportunity to do that. So what we're doing with this token is when you mint a STEAD token, when you contribute, what we're going to be doing is taking stable coins. You take a stable coin, however much you want to put in, $50, $100, $200, you go in and you'll mint STEAD tokens. So when you contribute that amount of stablecoin, that will be used to construct or to purchase already existing floating infrastructure. And when we say floating infrastructure, we're mostly talking about, again, tuna fishing boats, fish cages, floating docks and piers for fish ports, for example, or ferry ports or what have you. We could also be talking about floating houses because there are coastal resorts all over the Philippines. It's known around the world for having some of the most beautiful beaches in the world. If you don't believe me, look up Boracay, look up Banai Banai in Davao Oriental or Samal Island. All of these places are really, really pretty. And there's these large beach resorts there. But again, you only have so much real estate. So there are some resorts now that are building floating houses. They're putting them up on Airbnb as these floating house. If you get enough of them together, you can have a whole floating village. And we've actually talked to a few resorts that want to do that, right? But as you can imagine, getting a mortgage on a floating house is not the easiest thing in the world. It's hard enough to get a mortgage on a regular house. So but again, I digress. So to come back to the point here, what we're doing is we're creating a platform that allows the funding of floating infrastructure, mostly fishing boats and fish cages. And then in return, you hold on to these STEAD tokens, which are basically tickets that are used to rent out that asset. So the fisherman that's operating that fishing boat that we've now obtained for him, whenever he catches fish, whenever he goes out and whenever he takes the boat out into the sea, he has to rent that floating asset. He has to rent that fishing boat because he doesn't own it until a certain amount of time has gone by. So the STEAD tokens that were minted are used as tickets to rent time with the floating asset, which means they have to be bought back and burned. So given enough time, the token eventually goes deflationary.
Got it. Got it. Like I told you guys, this Mitchell is a wealth of information, and that, which leads me into my next question, Mitchell. Um, Now, for some people in the room, because we had an AMA with a group a couple of days ago, I want to say, and in security was an issue there. Now, could you tell me how is this different? From a security, and how can this be not considered a security? And the reason why I say that is because just a little brief thing about another AMA we had. They offered something as far as like rental properties and things like that was concerned. And us, I was telling Scott, it's kind of funny because I wasn't even, since I'm based in the United States, I wasn't even allowed to like get onto their website like to find out more information about that. So maybe if
Right.
you could touch on that for a quick second, that'd be great also.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the SEC is very, sometimes they can be very strict with that kind of thing. And it's important to note that there are a few things that can provide a return on an initial investment, or a few assets, I guess you could say. A better way of phrasing it is there are a few assets that you can hold and they can appreciate in value. For example, gold, right? If I hold onto a bar of physical gold, that's not going to be considered security. That's a commodity. That's what gold is, silver is, other kind of rare earth metals. Another thing that's not considered a security is tickets. So, for example, if I say that I want to go to a music concert or a rock concert, I'm going to go online. I'm going to buy a ticket that's going to allow me to get into this concert. And that ticket, I could turn around, I could resell it to someone else, I could gift it to a friend if I decide I don't want to go, and I might, if I sell it, I might get more or less money than I initially paid for it. But that's also not considered a security because tickets, by definition, can't be securities. So the way that this works is when a STEAD token is minted, because it's going to be used to rent time with an existing asset, it's the same kind of thing as if you were renting time at a concert. If I'm renting time on a boat, if I'm renting time with a fish cage and I can do whatever I want with that fish cage, let's say I want to, I don't know, grow fish in it, that's often what fish cages are used for, then that's perfectly fine because I'm renting the time with it. So effectively, the token, it's actually more like a ticket. And so this ticket is can go up in value or it can go down in value. But of course, because more of them are being burned because the token itself is going to be deflationary again given enough time, then the way it's kind of laid out is it's something like a semi-stable coin because when tokens are minted, a greater number of tokens end up having to be burned than the amount that were initially minted, right? So it's going to go up at a constant rate in value every year, even though it's just a ticket that you're using to rent something for a certain amount of time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely makes sense to me, especially the analogy that you use, as far as like the concert tickets are concerned. So that definitely brought it home for me. So let me ask, like, what other assets can this be used to fund exactly?
This can be used for a lot of things. So, in theory, you could take the same platform. We could take the same tokenomics that we have right now. And we've gone very into depth. If I can go off on a tangent for a second, we've gone very, very into depth in our tokenomics. Our security audit is currently underway, right? This is not a project where we started up a month ago and now we're going to sell our token with the promise that in the future we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do that. This project is already so far along. We have most of our smart contracts written. They're deployed in Sepolia. We've got our security audit going, and we've got physical assets right now already. We're not doing this with the promise of having physical assets in the future, but rather we already have a tuna fishing boat that we're operating. We have a an island hopping boat. We have another boat. It's a milkfish fishing boat. To explain what that is, a lot of people don't know what a milkfish is. It's kind of a common fish around Southeast Asia, but there's a lot of them. They're very very common around here. There's a pretty big market for them. So the idea is that we have all of these boats in place already. We're operating these fishing vessels so that when operators go out and they rent time with a fishing vessel, let's say that after a certain while they no longer want that vessel, we can take it, we can bring it back into our area, and we can rent it out and then operate at a profit. So every token that's minted is immediately upon being minted, it's either already directly collateralized by a real world asset, guaranteeing a kind of floor price that the token can't go below, making it in cryptocurrency terms a very safe investment. Or on the other hand, it can be used to construct something. So it's basically set aside for a real world asset. But again, going back to what can it be used to construct? What can it be used to build? So I covered fishing boats. Tuna fishing boats are a very large industry in Southeast Asia. Fish cages are a very large industry in Southeast Asia and in other developing countries. Floating houses I talked about. So we have a department, kind of like a branch of our company, that's involved in the construction of floating infrastructure, like floating houses that will connect together, kind of like Legos, where you can snap together multiple floating houses to build a floating village or to build a floating resort. And a lot of the resorts up in the north of the country, in the Philippines, are interested in expanding their own footprint because all of the beach on both sides of it is already bought up, right? They want to buy these floating resorts. They want to build these floating resorts, and they lack the capital. So there's already interest from them in using these tokens to construct these floating resorts and then renting out time in the resorts using the STEAD tokens. Um, but theoretically, we could allow coastal resorts. We could allow houses like you could take a rental home and use it in with the same process. But we want to focus on floating infrastructure because it's a very underserved and very profitable area right now that no one else is doing anything in this space. We're the only ones.
Yeah, that's definitely amazing, Mitchell, and very well put. Let's see, just so let's take a Wadi. I see we brought Wadi up here. Always an excellent guest here on the panel in the Lions Den. Wadi, did you have any questions for Mitchell before we proceed to any more?
So far I'm just listening. I will ask the question at the end, but sounds very interesting.
Thank you, Wadi.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. So Mitchell, so I'm assuming that this means that the token is collateralized. I'm sorry, by those assets as soon as they're minted. Is that what you were saying?
Yes, exactly. So every token that's going to be in circulation, or most tokens, some of them will be pre-minted. But anytime that you go and you mint a token with your stable coins, those stable coins will be invested into a floating asset. Again, whether that's a fishing boat or a fish cage that's going to produce more fish to be sold in the market somewhere, whether that's a floating house that's going to be rented out on Airbnb, whatever the case is, there's a real world asset that's behind the token. It's giving it value. It's guaranteeing that there is intrinsic inherent value in that token. It's not as speculative as a lot of other tokens that can flop to zero or can get rugged. It's not really easy to do that with these kind of tokenomics when you have real collateral behind everything.
Got it, got it. And now we've mentioned quite a few times about these floating houses, and that was one of the things that was kind of amazing to me when we had our little introduction a couple of days ago when we decided to bring you guys on here. Do you want to talk about that and who would want to use this token to build a floating house? And maybe just give us a little bit more of like I mean, I know you showed us a picture when we had the meeting with you guys, which was pretty cool looking, to be honest with you. Did you just want to touch a little bit about that, and maybe go in a little bit more of the construction of the floating houses and stuff like that, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. So, actually, here in the Philippines in Southeast Asia, this is true in the Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, all around that area. There have been people that live on floating houses for a very long time. Do we want to let Dr. Cry in here? He's raising his hand.
Yeah, let me
Go ahead.
ask the thank you. Let me ask what DBS just asked a little differently to simplify it for us that's listening. Might be in a bad area. Let me know if y'all can't hear me. But
No, you're good.
if I buy the token, tell me how I make money. Simplified as that. If I own the token, I understand main. You buy the main token. They have paid spaces like these AMAs, and they use that to buy down the chart. So you tell us by owning the token, how do I make money?
It's actually really similar to that same process. So here's how it works, right? I'll take it from the beginning. I can give you a comprehensive view of it right now. Someone comes to us. Let's say that they're a fisherman. They want a second fishing boat. They come to us and they say, "This is the fishing boat that I want. I want a boat. It's going to be specialized in catching yellowfin tuna." We're going to say they're going to come to us. We're going to take that boat and put it up on our marketplace. From our marketplace, you can see the specs of the boat, you can see the engine, you can see the make and the model and what it's going to be used for and what area it's going to be fishing, all of the important information that you would want to know about a real world asset. You can take stable coins, put those into a pool to raise the funds to buy or to build that fishing boat. And then this fisherman who's got 10, 20, 30 years of experience in the aquaculture industry and hasn't been able to get the funds needed to buy this boat until now. He's going to take that boat and he's going to operate it. He's not just going to take it and walk away with it. He's going to take that boat out fishing. He's going to rent time with that boat until such a time that more tokens have been burned than were originally minted. So what you have at the end of the day is if I put in $10 or 10 USDT to get 10 STEAD tokens, then he's going to end up spending 12 or 15 or 20 USDT to buy back those STEAD tokens and burn those to rent the time with that asset. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so we're leasing that boat to him, and he's paying for that lease, and in return, we're getting a return on investment by tokens being burnt.
Something very similar to that, yes.
Got it, got it. Dr. Crypto, just a little backstory. Dr. Crypto, he's a real estate agent there in Florida, and he's definitely a businessman. So he's always to the point and wants to know exactly, like he said, how is it going to benefit him in the long run by wanting to look into investing in Steed. We do see we have 1 second, Mitchell. We're going to get back into because I really want you to deep dive a little bit in about these floating houses because it's so interesting to me, and I think a lot of other people here might be interested in it as well. But Wadi has his hand up. Wadi, did you have a quick question?
Yeah. Real quick, Mitchell, how long has your company or your brand been in business?
About 2 years. So we've been developing, and keep in mind that what we do is twofold, right? We have the cryptocurrency, the platform, the DeFi platform STEAD, and then we're also involved in constructing some of these floating assets as well. So we've been designing catamarans, which are dual hulled boats. We've been designing fish cages. We've spent a lot of time designing a floating house for some of these resorts, and that is actually under construction right now on Boracay Island. So we've only been here for about 2 years in the Philippines, although the ideas, the thoughts, and some of the designs started back when we were still in America before we moved our operations over here.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I asked because I was doing some research and pretty much it says that the company has been in business for about 20 years and it just didn't add up to me, but thank you.
Sure. Where did you see 20 years? Because I don't think no, no, we haven't been around for 20 years.
Yeah, no, that's what I found strange myself. So, um, I have a unique way of doing my research. So I also go based on your website, and basically, that was the details that came up. If you want, I'll send it to you directly.
Sure, sure, go ahead. Yeah, you might have been, I don't know where you saw that, but if that's in there, we can correct that. It hasn't been 20 years.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for that, Mitchell. And yeah, so let's go ahead, Mitchell, and talk about these floating houses and what's involved in that, and maybe even like the construction of them and how they work and what's the game plan for them in the future. And I remember you showing us a picture of them. They look really really cool. So if you want to go in on that for a little bit, that'd be great.
Thank you. And yeah, actually, Jesse, if you want to, I don't know, would Jesse be able to post something in here? Could he post a link to an image and maybe
Yeah,
we could pull that up?
Jesse just sent me a DM. He's actually having a little bit of an issue being trying to come back up as a speaker. Jesse, if you can hear me, could you just probably maybe try to exit the app altogether and then come back in, and then me or Scott will bring you back up. Yeah, he just DM'd me and said that he was having a little bit of an issue. It keeps dropping him down to listener instead of speaker.
He may have to update his X. That's what was happening when folks couldn't come up to my spaces.
Yeah, very true, Doc. Definitely very true. You might have to update the app. Let me see if I can try to bring him back up again here.
Yeah, to be honest, can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you, Scott. How you doing,
Yeah,
brother?
Yeah, I'm sound because for some reason it now says Mitchell's the host and you're the co-host. So I ain't sure what's going on with this space.
Yeah. I think it's just a little
That's
mix up.
X. Yeah, that's X. X does that all the time. Yesterday I had
Yeah.
two hosts.
Yeah, it says it has its bad days and its good days, I guess there. But Mitchell, until we can maybe bring Jesse back up, did you just want to go ahead into those to those floating houses?
Sure, yeah. Let me start at the beginning because there's a very rich history of these floating houses in Southeast Asia. So, like I was saying before, there's an area because a lot of Southeast Asia is near to the equator. So, what a lot of people don't realize is there are no hurricanes when you get very, very close to the equator. There's kind of like this strip of water space or of land that wraps around the Earth all along the equator. Hurricanes don't form there. And because a lot of Southeast Asia is covered in that space, even going back, I think hundreds of years. Well, yeah, it has been. It has been a few hundred years since these designs were first used. What people will do is they'll take bamboo, which is hollow, and they'll lash these bamboo limbs, these bamboo poles together into a kind of like a big grid, and you can build a bamboo house on top of it, and it'll float. And these days, if you take fiberglass and you put fiberglass, you kind of like apply it around the outside of these bamboo poles, you'll end up with something that can last much, much longer without rotting in the salt water compared to just bamboo on its own. So over here in a place called Punta Linao, there's a bay. There's, 5, 10, 20 floating houses that people are living on full time. So it's been a way of life for a while for people. And this is true in South America. There have been groups that have done this. This is true of not just floating houses made out of bamboo, but also boats. There is this nomadic group that exists down in Southeast Asia, and they actually live on boats, and they'll go between uh, the three main countries in the area, which is the Philippines and Malaysia and Indonesia, and they'll kind of travel back and forth depending on what they want to do at any given moment, right? So this is when it comes to floating houses, there's a lot of different kinds. Of course, there's houseboats. Everybody's familiar with houseboats, especially in the Netherlands. They have a lot of houseboats that live in those canals. People hang out down there. It's a very cool thing. But what we're doing, what we want to do with some of these coastal resorts here in the Philippines, is they want something that's an investment, right? You want a real world asset that is going to last a really long time. You don't want something made out of bamboo that's going to fall apart after so many years. So you can actually use, instead of steel for some ships, for example, you can use aluminum. Aluminum lasts a lot longer in the water, especially when you give it a zinc anode that will prevent any kind of corrosion on the aluminum almost entirely for potentially hundreds of years. Concrete, even more so. Concrete doesn't corrode at all. So we've actually got these concrete columns that are filled with this foam called EPS foam on the inside, and these columns will hold up a big platform on top of them, and they'll sit in the water, and you build the house on top of the platform, and inside the columns you have freshwater tanks, you have septic tanks, you have all these different things. You can put batteries if you want, all these different things that you need to live. So it's kind of like an off the grid house that you would sometimes see in these rural areas. And it's but it's not off the grid, it's right, right off the coast, and it's a really, really cool concept. um,
Guys, I do apologize about that. We're trying to get Mitchell back in here. That the space completely just shut out on us. I'm not exactly sure that's the first time that that's ever even happened to me personally, but we definitely space just completely just shut down again. We do apologize about that. I do have Mitchell back up here, and I'm going to invite Steed as well again for these guys to come back up. Let's see.
Yeah, I've had a few of my friends just message me and they said it happened to them earlier. They said that literally space just rugged and ended.
Yeah. Like I
So
mean,
it must.
Scott. Usually, like what happens is that like yesterday when we had a general space with Doc, And I couldn't do the hearing thing, but usually if I like Doc's method that he figured out is that if the host can actually, if you do it really quickly, just swipe up and get out of the app completely and come right back, then usually that fixes that situation. Doc's figured that out in the past, and that it worked perfectly yesterday when Doc recommended that I do that. But yeah, this one, it was no indication of like no indication really of the space having connection issues or anything. It literally just completely, the screen just went blank and completely shut down the whole space, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah,
I do it.
bro,
Yeah, go
bro.
ahead.
It's a Twitter thing, and it's gonna happen. It has happened to me plenty of times, so don't stress
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just a technical. That's the first time for me though, because it's like usually I would get something like, "Oh, connection issues," blah blah blah, coming up at the top. But this one, just the whole screen where I was just looking at everybody, the whole screen just goes blank, and then the space just completely shut off. So I do apologize about that, and thank you guys for coming back in. And Mitchell, I believe we were on the just talking about the floating houses and things like that. So if you wanted to just maybe just go back on that and talk a little bit more for maybe people that are just joining the room or have been in here since the last space.
Sure, yeah, yeah. So let me just wrap up what I was saying. I I was talking a little bit about how people have been living in floating houses and on boats in Southeast Asia for a very long time. So the idea of funding floating houses is not really new, but with modern materials, it's really more akin to a real estate investment than it is akin to an investment in a boat if you build a floating house, right? Because you can use concrete, you can use metals, you can use fiberglass, and these things that aren't going to rot, and even metals that are completely immune to rusting. So it's a very long-term asset. And so I really like floating houses. And there's certainly something that we gear towards wanting to fund more of.
Yeah, definitely. And we have Jesse back up here. It was, I mean, maybe he's able to pin at the top maybe one of those pictures or something like that. You know what I mean. So makes my next question. Yeah. So it says here, you say on your roadmap that you want Steed to eventually have an emergency fund to feature for operators. Is that something that you could go over with us really quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, in the same way that developing countries are lacking investment capital, developing countries are also lacking capital for things like insurance. These are profitable and necessary instruments in every economy. And yet, in developing countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, or in South American countries, which we also want to expand into, there's oftentimes, for example, for wooden boats, in which a lot of fishing boats, especially tuna fishing boats, are wood, you just cannot get insurance. It's almost an impossibility. You can look around all over banks, insurance companies, independent and private groups and associations, and they don't offer insurance. And it's not so much that you can't figure out what is an optimal rate of insurance to give a wooden boat. It's just, again, that there's a lack of capital. So you bring this capital in, and instead of providing insurance, you can provide something very similar, like emergency funds that kind of fill in this same role and support these small businesses in developing countries. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So basically, so that's just in place. So like you said, because it's extremely hard for some of these guys to get insurance and things like that on there, right?
Right, and of course, at the same time, what you can do with that insurance mechanism, and this is something we won't have rolled out on day one. What we will have rolled out on day one, we're going to launch this project. We're going to launch our platform in February, so that's coming up in the not too distant future. When this other feature gets rolled out, these emergency funds, what will happen is you'll be able to take some of your STEAD tokens. You'll be able to put them into a pool. These guys will make payments into that pool, and part of those payments will go to you because you already staked some funds, and part of it will get burned. So it's also just going to add more to the deflationary nature of the token.
Got it. Got it. So let me ask you this. I know, I think if I remember correctly, you don't want, since it's still being worked, like you don't really want to get into the tokenomics and things of the token itself. I mean, do I remember correctly by that? Because I know you said something about on February of next year is when that whole deal is going to come into play, correct?
Right. And I mean, we can talk a little bit about the tokenomics. I can't give an exact number at this time.
Okay.
I can't be very specific, but we can talk about how it works. Like I said, it's basically acquiring these real world assets, knowing that your token, if you hold this token, that it's fully collateralized, and then leasing out those assets. That's the idea. Or not so much leasing out as providing a ticket so that people can buy tickets and rent time. Again, it's more similar to like a concert than it is to a subletting or Airbnb or anything like that. So uh, if you look at the way what that pricing, what that kind of impact would have on the token is it would lead to something, and we have a full tokenomics analysis that right now we're writing up a report. We're having a company write up a report for us. It's going to do behave in a way. It's something that we call a semi-stable coin. So what we expect the price to do and what the price does in these simulations that we're running is it's going to go up consistently somewhere between 7% or 10% or 12% per year at a very steady rate. And you're not going to see these wild fluctuations that you see with a lot of other highly speculative cryptos. And so, because of that, if all of a sudden the market dips or we go into a full bear market, in the long term future, this is going to be one of those tokens that if you hold it in your portfolio, we would expect it to not lose value. Not only not lose value at all compared to the other tokens, but basically not lose value at all because again, it's fully collateralized. I think I can pass it over to Jesse and he can talk a little bit about this, but it's kind of like holding tax G instead of Tether or instead of USDC. If you hold Pax G, it's going to change in value relative to the dollar, but it never stops being collateralized, right, Jesse? Go ahead.
Yeah. Jesse, did you want to pitch in on that too? This is Jesse, and Jesse, do you want to first maybe just introduce yourself and then just piggyback off of what Mitchell said?
Yes, of course. So my name is Jesse. I'm the community manager for STEAD, and yes, basically, this is quite different between like current trending real world assets like Relio or Prop C, because basically, yes, as what Mitchell had said, this is backed by real world assets. This has a fixed interest yearly, and basically, even if it would go to a bear market, it would behave like USDT or USDC, that it won't really fluctuate in um it won't really fluctuate in its pricing, and we have already like real world demand for this. For example, there are already like companies in the Philippines that are waiting for us to launch and just waiting for stud token to be live so that we can start funding them, and there is already a real world demand for our stud token. We're just waiting for it to really be launched and for people to be to have this knowledge of a different niche or a different narrative real world asset in the real world asset narrative, basically.
Got it. And thank you for that, Jesse. And guys, if you could just do us a quick favor again, just to reset the room really quick, could you just do us a favor and maybe retweet the room out? We would greatly appreciate that. So back to my, let me see, Scott, did you have any questions at all for and maybe retweet the room out? We would greatly appreciate that. So back to my, let me see, Scott, did you have any questions at all for these guys? Scott, you
Yep.
with us?
Yeah, mate. Yeah. No, I'm just listening at the moment, mate. I'm trying to do about 10 things at once.
Yeah. Completely understand, man. Completely understand. So, Mitchell, my another question that I have, is it possible for you maybe to go into some of the goals? You know, us being here at Q4 of 2023, going into 2024. What kind of things do you guys have as far as you want to accomplish as maybe as goals of 2024 for next year?
Good question. So when we launch in February, we already have a bunch of aquaculture companies that want to do business with us, that want to acquire these assets and profitably put them to use. We've got a one company up in it's a place called Pangasinan, so it's kind of in the north of the Philippines. They want $500,000 in fish cages, mostly for milk fish. Some of it's for tilapia and to produce some other kind of seafoods. And we've been talking with them. I've been talking with them a little bit about, do you want lobster cages? Do you want shrimp? Do you want oyster? Things like this. And especially in Southeast Asia, fish is definitely the most common seafood. It's actually very difficult to grow lobster in a contained environment. A lot of lobster, even today, is caught in the wild. It's not something that you farm. And so, one of the things that we're investing some time and money into is developing these new technologies that will allow different types of aquaculture, like the increases, improved farming for shrimp, improved farming for lobster, and high value species like abalone and other things like that. So, but as of right now, we've got companies that want to get 30 fish cages for $500,000. We've got companies that want new fishing boats, new tuna fishing boats, new small like 3-man fishing boats that they'll go out in these protected bay areas. And then we've got a few resorts that want these floating houses. So I can't give an exact number on what I think will happen in the next year, but I would like for us to start within the first 2 quarters by fulfilling all of the needs of these companies. And by the third quarter, see a large chunk of those tokens that were minted in that process start to get bought back and burned. And then
Got
after
it.
that, I'd also like us to move out. Again, we'll start in the Philippines. And the idea behind this is you're going to start in a place like the Philippines. It's very underserved. It doesn't have enough liquidity, and cryptocurrency can bring in that liquidity and help these small businesses to get on their feet, right? That's a very good thing to do. But we can still go to places like Indonesia, like Malaysia, like South America, Honduras, Panama. These are also markets that are underserved as well.
Yeah, that's really amazing, honestly, that you guys actually already have, people just waiting for you to make your next move so they can just get involved with Steed itself. So yeah, that's definitely amazing. So tell me more about this. I mean, I know when you were talking about the floating houses earlier, you were mentioning something about maybe putting these by a resort or something like that, or maybe even offering them as, which is the well-known Airbnb, to be able to rent these, these floating houses out for people to come vacation at and etc.
And another thing as well, while I'm thinking about it, a good thing to like actually speak about maybe is what you was on about on the meeting. How these houses can actually be used for mining resources like lithium and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's what I wanted. I was going to get into that too, Scott, because Mitchell, he had my mind blown, honestly, when he started talking about like how they were going to get basic power to the house, like by using the ocean and things like that. Mitchell, I was amazed by that. So if you want to touch on all of that good stuff too, we'd love to hear it, bro.
Right, right. Thank you. Yeah, this is really my favorite subject to talk about is these floating houses. I love this stuff. I've dedicated my life to this stuff. And so, in regards to generating electricity, so the easiest way to generate electricity when you cannot be connected to an electric grid is using solar panels. And in places like California, for example, there's a big push right now to have more solar, more wind, use more green energy. And one of the main bottlenecks of using green energy is energy storage. It's not so much energy production. Solar's gotten very efficient over time. Wind has gotten even more so, extremely efficient. Wave energy is going to be one of the next big renewable energy technologies that I think is going to hit the scene in a big way in the next 5 years. I can definitely see that coming. But you're still going to hit the bottleneck of energy storage when it comes to the use of renewables. And one of the issues with that bottleneck is lithium. If you guys have been listening to Elon Musk and some other people, sometimes you'll hear people talk about the issues behind lithium. About 3/4 of the world's lithium is found in an area of South America that's kind of in the border region between like Bolivia, Chile, I think Peru, and in that area, that's where a lot of on-land lithium mining happens. Right, and lithium is needed to produce batteries. Without it, you cannot make batteries, you cannot store electricity in any kind of convenient way. It's far and away the best technology. Most over 90% of the world's lithium is actually in the ocean. It's not in land. And so there's this technology that we are also working on developing that can allow you to basically you take a machine, you put it in into the ocean, and it will absorb lithium through the water. It'll go into this machine and collect, and then later on you can go in, harvest out the lithium, and the type of lithium it produces is immediately battery grade. So this is another one of these breakthrough things that we can bring funding to that kind of project.
Yeah, that's just, to me, is just mind blowing, honestly. Like how you're able to do that, and then when you do, like, I mean, is there any like plan of is there a certain of number of these floating houses that you plan on maybe building next year, or anything like that? And as far as, like I was saying before, with the Airbnb, so I'm assuming as another way to generate income, that you guys will also, obviously, after these houses are built and things like that, that you guys will be renting these out for people to come and stay in them as well.
Right. So it'll probably be the resorts that we will work with. It'll be established resorts that will want to receive funding in order to build these houses. Now, you can build about 40 floating houses, and there's one resort that has said they want to do this. They want to start with two, but you can expand up to 40 and connect them all together. There can be small, kind of like roads, walkways that exist between the houses, and it's all attached to this larger floating superstructure that's above the water. And so you can have a full floating resort with about 40 rentable units. And that's something that we do plan on building. I can't say if we'll build it within the first year, but it's something that we plan on doing alongside those 30 fish cages that we've already had a request to have constructed. And of course, these other assets that I haven't even talked about yet, mostly fishing boats. We expect that to be the largest group. There's a lot of fishermen and aquaculture companies that want fishing boats. But when it comes to things like these emerging technologies, potentially wave energy and almost certainly lithium extraction technology, those are I really can't give solid numbers at this time whether or not those are going to be funded by our platform.
Got it, and it definitely makes sense to me. Especially, since that area there that you're in is such a huge fishing, uh just I don't even know what you would call that, but it's like, I mean, that's a lot of what goes on there, as far as that's concerned. So, as far as I'm concerned, it seems to me that you guys have definitely, like you said, you plan on going, venturing in other different countries and things like that, which is awesome. But you guys are in definite prime location for what it
Oh,
is that you
absolutely.
guys are trying to do, right?
Oh yeah, we totally are. The Philippines is a great location to to get aquaculture assets in the water, to get fish cages and fishing boats. It's one of the most productive waters in the world. It's a very, very productive company, and companies that come in here and invest money in here often see really big returns, but it doesn't receive enough investment from the outside world. That's one of the issues the Philippines has, is just a lack of investment.
Gotcha. So that's where we insert Steed, and then they come in and help you and help that type of thing out there. So yeah, I mean, definitely, to me, it totally makes sense. What it is that you guys are trying to accomplish, and definitely, like I've said before, it's definitely a unique, out of the norm type thing, which I find, truly amazing. To be honest with you, with different projects, when they're trying to accomplish something different in the space, it definitely always gathers my attention, as well as, I'm assuming, others that are just definitely interested in some of the things like that versus, other tokens that are just like, with the memes and different things like that. I'm looking here to see if we had any other questions. I'm going to check the Telegram here. Mitchell, is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience? As far as any other assets, I think you mentioned something about some other assets. So it's basically, we have the floating houses, the boats, and the cages and things like that. Is that basically the gist of it?
Yes, those will probably form the bulk of the collateral of the real world assets that are going to collateralize the token. But the important thing to consider is that, again, when you mint a token, you have a guarantee that it will be collateralized by a real world asset. So, as far as worrying about something going down in price or worrying about something getting rugged, it just isn't possible. This is something where you have a real, tangible, physical asset behind it, like if you buy PAX G, if you buy gold. When in the case of PAX G, you don't hold it in your hand, but gold is a safe investment that can be profitable, can appreciate in value. But when you got something like aquaculture, it can be far, far more profitable because it's producing something, right? It's producing fish or it's producing lobster, which is a very high value product. So this is one of the best places to put your money.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely makes sense because obviously, with it being one of the biggest fishing places in the world, right? Like you would always. I mean, there would always be a need for that. I guess you should say. So, Mitchell,
Oh, absolutely.
let me ask you another question. Now, if the people that are listening now, if they wanted to, follow you guys, I mean, I know you got obviously you have an account here on X. Is that the best place for guys to just to follow you here and with when you come out with different news and things like that about further developments of the Steed? Is that the best place, or do you guys have any other socials that you would like to share or anything like that?
You should follow us on X. You should join our Discord. And actually, Jesse's the link master, so let me pass it over to him. Do you want to take over, Jesse?
Yeah, that's correct. We have our Twitter page. We also have our new updated website with more information about the token as well as the infrastructure, and also a little bit about the tokenomics. We also have our Discord channel. On our Twitter page, as well as we have like beautiful, beautiful videos and images of the floating houses, the what we imagine the floating houses would be, our new boats. We will also post one other boat like today or tomorrow, the our tuna fishing boat that was already newly painted, so that's also like part of our, it's more of becoming of a fleet already of boats that is actually will be producing aquaculture, as well as will also be harvesting aquaculture from Davao, from the southern part of the Philippines basically.
Very nice, very nice. And another question that I had for you, Mitchell, too, is like, so with all that you want to accomplish as far as like these, the floating houses and the boats and things like that, just a personal question for me is so is there like a company there that in the Philippines that would assist you as far as, I mean, I'm sure you and Jesse aren't going out and hand building these boats yourselves,
Right.
obviously, right? So I'm assuming that there's like a company that you guys have like paired up with in order to get these things constructed because it's funny because in the neighborhood that I live here, I've actually had the ability at one time to actually watch them build a home from the ground up, and if anybody's ever seen that, it's kind of amazing to where it just starts out and then where it ends up, you know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, have you guys like partnered with a company there in the Philippines to help you like build these things and stuff like that?
Yes, absolutely. So actually, that's why I originally moved from America to the Philippines, is when we started that naval architecture company. That company is still in operation, the one that I helped to co-found. And so that is the company that would be in charge of most of the construction of a lot of these floating assets, especially when it comes to the floating houses. Because again, I was involved with the design process of using concrete. And yes, it's a floating house, it's a floating asset, right? But it's actually made with concrete, a very high performance concrete. It's called HPC, high performance concrete. It has a lot of things in it. It's got alkali resistant glass fibers. It's got silica fumants and some other things. That basically, what the concrete does is, and again, this is really interesting if you're into this kind of stuff. Is concrete is naturally porous, and you don't think about that. Is it's like a sponge, so the water can actually go through it. If you use different materials like chopped little bits of fiberglass and things like that, you can actually make it totally watertight. And so it cannot corrode, it cannot rust, it cannot decay or fall apart at all. So 500 years later, your concrete house is still there, it's still floating in the water. Again, it's like building a house on land. It's a really long-term investment. It holds its value. So yeah, that would be the company that would be helping in construction of some of these assets, but not all of them.
Gotcha, gotcha. That's definitely good. I'm glad you guys got paired up there. So, Mitchell, another question I have is just kind of off the thing. Do you speak the language at all there?
Um, a little bit.
A little bit,
I
yeah. Like
I
it's
should know more after 2 years, but
Yeah, gotcha, gotcha. It's kind of me. I'm pretty good with my Spanish. Like, if you put me in a Spanish speaking country, then I'd probably survive. I guess you should say so. So, Mitchell, let me ask you. We're coming up at the top of the hour here. Let me ask you this. So, as far as we went over, what you kind of see the STEAD going as far as next year. So obviously, like you've said before, this is a long term, long term project, obviously, because of what needs to be, what's all involved, I guess you should say, right? And it's just the continuously building and things like that. So now, as far, and I know you said that as far as the token is concerned, you said something about that was going to be in the works of February of 2024. So is there anything? I mean, I guess should we just dive into the Discord or just obviously follow you here on X, just and wait to see when more information about that would come out? Because I'm sure a lot of people here may be wondering, when they could actually go ahead and deep dive further into Steed and maybe actually, invest into it.
Right. Read our Git book. Follow us on X. Absolutely, we will be coming out with. We'll be active every day. We'll be active every day for I think the next 10 years. This is a long-term project. If you're holding this token, it's not going anywhere. It's a long-term keeper. It's a definite hodl token, and yeah, I if you subscribe to our X, if you follow us on X, we will come out with a lot more information in the coming months, including a discount sale that early adopters will benefit from.
Yeah, that's really amazing. So let me see. Wadi, did you have any other questions for Mitchell or Jesse?
No, actually, everything, like I said earlier, it does sound interesting. And apparently, some way, somehow, my AI was the one that made the mistake. So I apologize for that.
No
And
problem.
yeah, I was like, wait, but maybe the domain was connected to a website before, things like that does happen. And, AI is not, some AI, ChatGPT is not up to current date. The data is limited, but like I said, I apologize.
Oh, it's all good, brother. Mistakes happen. Yeah, ChatGPT. If I'm correct by saying that, I believe it's like it doesn't go anything over September 2021. I believe, if I've read that right. I've read several different things about that. So yeah. So as far as anything else is concerned, Mitchell or Jesse, did you guys have anything else maybe you want to share, or just maybe some closing statements altogether?
I don't, but let me pass it to you, Jesse.
Yeah, if you actually want to learn more information about STED real soon, yes, please follow our X page. And also, we just onboarded our first ambassador, Josh Crypto, and he will also be going into deep dives on STED, on how it will change the RWA narrative and how it would benefit you. Basically, if you invest in STED in the future, you could just like buy it and leave it. It will still go up in price, whether it's a bull or bear market. And Josh Crypto will also help us on like providing that needed Twitter exposure. So you can also follow him, follow us as well. You can join our Discord. We have already a booming community on Discord as well. We are all active in Discord, so we can. That's actually it.
Amazing, guys. All right. Well, since we're a little over the top of the hour, so I just wanted to say that definitely, besides the whole technical issues that we had earlier, I still can't explain exactly. I don't know what happened there. Like I said, my screen went blank. Scott was also been DMing me as well that he's hearing a lot of background noise and things like that, and he can't really hear too well for some reason. So I hope that wasn't an issue for everybody. I know sometimes some of us can hear, some of us say, they can't, things like that. But as far as everything else is concerned, I do want to say that besides the technical issues, like I said, I do appreciate each and every one of you guys showing up today and listening to Steed and what they have to say. I'm definitely excited to continue to follow these guys and watch the progress here in the future. And as well, so like he said, give the socials a follow. They do have a Discord if you'd like to jump in there, and I'm sure a lot of the main news will come out obviously right here on X as well. So if there's no other questions or anything like that, I do want to say that I do, like I said, I appreciate each and every one of you for showing up today. And I just wanted to do a little thing too, as far as Maine's concerned. If anybody here is interested, projects or anything like that, that would like to have a dedicated spotlight here with Maine, we do offer that. So we have general spaces on, what is that? We have Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then we have our main space, which is on Wednesdays, and obviously today, Friday. So it's definitely been an amazing, action-packed, more information-packed. Like I said, like I said at the beginning, Mitchell, when we had the initial the little meeting that we had with Mitchell and Jesse, I mean, you could just tell how passionate that this guy is about what they're doing with Steed, and that to me gets me fired up when I see other people getting fired up, right? And it makes me want to deep dive a little bit further, and that's obviously to here. We recommend you do that. Maine, as far as everything is concerned, is a platform that we bring projects up. Example, Steed here. And at the end of the day, it is obviously for up to you to go in and get into their socials, ask questions and things like that. Which obviously that's not an issue with Mitchell. I mean, we rammed him basically with a lot of different questions, and he didn't skip a beat. Which is also tells me one thing, is that he's extremely knowledgeable as well, as what he's actually talking about. So again, I just wanted to say you could have been anywhere else in the world today, but you decided to come here and hang out with us, and we appreciate each and every one of you, and you have no idea how much that means to us. And we'll catch you on the next one. Have a great day or night.